when laying out elements using Bootstrap, there's a couple things that we need to learn about. And those are containers, rows, and columns. Now, you might think, well, what are these three different things? Well, these are all classes that Bootstrap gives us in order to lay out our documents. How we use them is very important. And so what we want to look at is our container for the most part in this case. And I'm actually going to take you to Bootstrap documentation just so you can see it's a little bit better. All right, so here you're going to notice that we don't have just one container, but we actually have 7 containers. We have the regular container, and this is going to be of different sizes depending upon what we are. So if we're under 576 pixels, it's going to be 100% of the width of our screen. Now you might think, well, what is that 576? Well, that's for a lot of times your smaller phones, like your minis. You have small, which is your phones, medium, which is going to be for your iPad and other types of tablets like that. And then you have large and extra large. Your large might be for a tablet that's in horizontal mode, or it's going to be for like a laptop or desktop computer. With Bootstrap 5, they added extra large, and those are for those people who have those really big monitors. And you can notice what they're going to be. But even for container or any of the others, as you can see it's 100% up to a certain point, and then it's going to wind up being like, hey, here's my maximum size. So you can see what these differences are, and you're going to notice that, like, hey, if I use container and I'm on a large size screen, so between 992 pixels and 1200 pixels, it's only going to show 960 pixels. It's going to give me some little bit of margins off to my side. So these are my different breakpoints. Now the 7th is going to be container-fluid. And this is saying, hey, I want to be the maximum width no matter what size my screen is. So always show 100%. Now in reality, most of the time, at least for me, I'm either using container or I'm using container-fluid. I'm not usually mixing up and using the other container, but they are there if I need them. Now this is important, and I'm going to show you just how we're going to go and create this. I'm going to take out this hello world and put in a new div with a class of container. And that's all I have to do. I'm going to add a style tag here. And yes, I'm using my class container. You might say, well, why are you using that? Well, I'm just going to show you real quick. Background color 333. Okay, so it's a really dark gray. Now you might ask, well, why am I doing this? Well, I just want to show you how you're going to have some borders off to the side if you use container. So here you can see I don't have a lot of content. I just have one blank paragraph, but you can see, hey, I've got some space here. If I come in here and I'm just going to resize my browser, you can see how it stays the same, and then it's going to do a jump. And that's where I'm hitting those different breakpoints. So that's what my container is doing for me. And that's why I typically use container or container fluid, is that they show different sizes. Now let me show you the container fluid real quick. I'm going to simply copy and paste this here. And then just say container-fluid. And I'm going to come up here, my CSS, and I'm going to need to give it a different color for my container-fluid. So I'm going to use 777, which is a much lighter gray, so we'll be able to see a difference. Reload my screen. You can see my container fluids take up the whole width. And if I resize this, you notice that no matter what size I am, I'm always at that full width. At some point, I get full width for my container when I get below that 576 pixels. But I always typically am going to have some sort of column, some sort of spacing. So which do I want to do? It depends upon my layout, what I'm going to do. All right, so let's talk about rows real quick. Because you see, in order to know where to put my columns, I have to have them inside a row. And this is important because my columns can change based upon the size. I want to show you this real quick. So I'm going to take out my container and whatnot like that. Let's do a real quick div. So inside my container, I'm going to create one called div class row. So you can see my 3 columns like this. And you can see I have 1, 2, and 3 columns. And my columns, this is the XS. Remember, my XS is extra small. If I leave anything off, it goes to that by default. So my columns, as I resize this, are going to resize with me. Well, that's great. Now, when I do layout, this is going to borrow something from print layout many, many years ago. I actually have 12 different columns. So when I just say call, it says, you know what? Take up and divide the amount of space equally. So it's like saying call -4. Well, I can say call -2 and call -2 like this, reload. You notice that my 2 outer columns are very small. My bigger column says, ooh, take up that remaining space. So if I say 12 minus 2 minus 2, that gives me 8, and I see the 8 in the middle. So I might be thinking, wait a second, maybe I don't want to do it like this. Maybe I want to make it so where if I'm on a mobile device, like a phone, and it's being held vertically, instead of having some really small columns, I want to have them stacked. So I'm going to come over here and say MD-2. This is showing, hey, you know what? If they're medium, so at that breakpoint, be 2 columns or bigger. If I get below that medium, what I want to do is I want to set up so it's the full width. So I'm going to come over here and say call-12. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Call-12. Go back to my browser and reload. And you notice that, ooh, now it's setting up like, hey, I'm going to take up this full amount of space. And it's going to automatically create some different rows for me. So this way, I can start to adjust and move things around so that something doesn't get so small that I either have to scroll real long or I can't see it well. I can put things appropriately like this. And I can have a different number of columns for each different breakpoint if I want to. Typically, I only need a couple of them. And you can see, yes, it's 12 columns, but I can kind of merge those columns into different sections. And I can do a different row and have something different layout there. Another row, do it differently there. And I can, each time I need to have another row, I'm going to use that row and then put my columns inside of it. You notice all I'm doing is just simply using my divs with special classes. Now, I don't even have to use divs, so I could use an article or a main tag or any other tag I want. I'm just showing you with divs because this is pretty simple. So it's very easy for me to start to lay out and control how much space do I want. Do I want to have information to the left and my right? So for example, I might have a sidebar with commonly used links and information, maybe like on a blog or something like that. Or I might have information on both sides, and maybe one side is a menu and one side is going to be some testimonials. Or maybe I want to have just testimonials in general, and I have a picture of a person and what they say, and then my next row I have what they say and a picture of the person. However I want to do that, I have that opportunity with using this simple type of layout system. So something for you to remember, something for you to look at. It's very, very easy to use. In our next video, I'm going to show you how do we actually nest different containers within one another and why you might want to do that. So stay tuned looking for that, or take out the look at the whole playlist that's going to be available.